What's happening, guys? Welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to complete the buy, sell, hold. That's right. We've done the buys. We've done the sells. Tonight, we're going to do our holds, and who I'm always holding on to is my co-host. You know him as Jerry Sinclair, but I call him the man of the hour and the man with the power. Jerry Sinclair, what's up, buddy?
You know, I am not lucky enough to have you holding me currently, but it still is close enough just talking to you. I am wonderful. But Randy, it's not just us, Bubba.
It's not, and we're officially killing off a gimmick. So our guest tonight is none other than the director of content for Player Profiler, aka the boss. He is the director of Player Profiler's content. He is an ultra high stakes best ball and dynasty player. He is the co-host of not only the Sonic Truth and the First Class Fantasy and the GOAT District podcast, but he recently started the press coverage podcast. He's more than all that. He is our buddy. He is Mr. Theo Gremminger. Theo, buddy, welcome to the show. And Jerry, Theo and Jerry on the same show.
I'm honored that Jerry made time for me this time. I've been a Jerry fill-in, which is a big honor. Like, Jerry's a guy that, you know, everybody looks up to.
Small shoes to fill, but thank you.
Chance to fill in for him was awesome. But I told Memphis that I really wanted some Jerry next time I was in the war zone. So I'm happy. It's a full house war zone. And yeah, congrats to you guys. I mean, I think like more and more people are realizing every single month how great a podcast you guys have been putting out. And it's been this way for years. And I think it's just like blowing up. So we're so excited to be working with you guys. And it's just been tremendous seeing all the people talking about how much they love the war zone. And I'm like, the war zone's been amazing for years. This is like, it's like, you know, people are just discovering something that we all know was amazing. So congrats to you guys, and looking forward to what you guys are putting out the rest of July and August.
Well, for sure. But that works both ways. Don't think that Jerry and I haven't had opportunities to maybe join forces with other groups, and nothing against those groups. It has to be the right fit, right? It has to go hand in glove, and the chance to work with not only you, but Matt Kelly and Billy Muzio and just Dario Offstein. I could go on and on and on and on, and I'm going to forget someone if I try to, so I don't want to. It's an amazing group. And like I said, you're co-hosting several of my favorite shows. The GOAT District, I used to, a long time ago, co-host on that show as well. First Class Fantasy, listen to you and Billy on that just recently. And of course, the Sonic Truth. We're going to talk about one of your co-hosts on the Sonic Truth in just a second. But I want you to tell us about your newest endeavor called words press coverage. I started to say full press, and I was like, this isn't basketball. This is press coverage. You know, that's the NFL. Tell us about press coverage and what you're doing.
So it's a hosted podcast where I bring on guests every single week. We had Sigmund Bloom and Adam Levitan to start it out. So I was able to book two guys I've been listening to for years, and they were both really generous with their time and their takes. And then I have Josh Larkey on tomorrow, someone I've podcasted with so many times now. It's wild. We had him on the GOAT District a million times, and he's come on First Class Fantasy, and he's a friend. But I think for me, I think a lot of the hosted podcasts, not on Player Profiler, but like a one-on-one podcast, they all start sounding the same. And for me, I wanted to be able to find edges, and I want to find actionable information that can help any fantasy manager. And I think that I'm asking the right questions, and I'm having on the right guests. And I got a lot of feedback for the first two shows, and I'm hoping that I can kind of keep it going all summer long. And yeah, I appreciate you talking about it, Memphis, and we got to get you on at some point. But it's been great, and I think that it's getting harder and harder in like the information age to find those edges. So that's for me. That's what I'm trying to uncover every single week.
Well, I will tell you, the Sigmund Bloom show was fantastic. You had a bit of an internet outage, and he just rolled right on, went right on with the show. I thought you two together were great, and what a bunch of great information in that show. I highly recommend it. Now, you can find that one of two places, and you should already be subscribed in 4 places, but the Player Profiler YouTube channel and podcast channel. You may say, well, I'm a podcast consumer. we're going to do a little segment after the show's over that you won't get on the podcast or on this YouTube feed because it's going to be called the overtime. We're going to give you 3 rookies and then, 3 holds. And then at the end on the overtime, Theo and I are going to go one-on-one real quick and give you a rookie that you should be holding on to. But you don't get that in the podcast. You don't get that in the YouTube live stream. You need to be subscribed everywhere. And then this past Friday night, Saturday morning, I did a solo podcast on the Dynasty WarZone YouTube and podcast channel. I added 8 more buys. I called it on target. Why did I call it on target? Because I used target data to make some decisions on buying these guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a little time out. We're going to hear just a quick word from the folks over at Underdog, and then we're going to get into it. We're going to get good people, bad tweets, not only with Jerry, but with Jerry and Theo right after this.
Let's take a moment to talk about Underdog Fantasy. Now, many of you have already signed up. Thousands have signed up from Player Profiler already over the years. Underdog has supported us since 2020. Much of what you see on Player Profiler is because of Underdog, because of their support. Get the Underdog app, plug in that promo code Underworld. I used to play Underdog just for the best ball drafts. I mean, the best ball drafts are amazing. These draft rooms fill so quickly, and you can win life-changing money. You want to take advantage of all the sleepers we talk about on this show? Well, what better place than in an Underdog draft room to do that? And I recommend taking your Underdog play to the next level by diving into their NFL pick'ems. It's important to correlate those NFL pick'ems. You can pick both the quarterbacks and the wide receivers to exceed expectations. Correlate them, and you can 5x your payout. Bada bing, bada boom. Underdog Fantasy, the promo code is Underworld. For an instant deposit match up to $100, Underdog is the truest friend of the Underworld.
Yeah, big shout out to our friends at Underdog. So, Jerry, we're going to jump into our favorite segment. This is becoming so big, and this is why I love the Player Profiler audiences now that they're joining us on both YouTube and the podcast, because they love good people, bad tweets. They really do. But I want to make sure it's very crystal clear, because you're going to recognize tonight's name as the offender in good people, bad tweets. It's not about picking on people or other sites or other hosts. It's just, if you say something we think's way out there, you're going to wind up on good people, bad tweets. And I saw this one, and I hit Theo with a text. I'm like, hey, are we cool to do this? He was like 100%. So we're going to jump into good people, bad tweets. And good people, bad tweets this week is brought to you by Theo's co-host on the Sonic Truth. He's also been a guest here on the Dynasty WarZone. His name is Alan Seslowski. And Alan Seslowski on the Sonic Truth, if you haven't listened, go back and listen, because they did their hot takes for the season. And Alan said, bold prediction, James Conner will outscore Breece Hall next season. Now, Theo, I kind of have an idea where you're going because I listened to the Sonic Truth. But Jerry, when you saw that on the show sheet, what did you think?
I am going to surprise you. It's contrarian. I'm not totally against it. Like, listen, if I was a betting man, I would not be betting that James Conner is going to outscore Breece Hall, but that offense is going to be effing putrid. So who else are they going to rely on? Are they going to rely on Toon, or are they going to rely on Colt McCoy and the dust that he has been offering fantasy players since he got hurt in the national championship 10 years ago? I think they're going to rely on James Conner. Now, granted, Breece Hall, he got that ding dong that, it chafes on his knee because it's so long, and he's going to be a reception monster, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. I'm not mad at Allen. If we're going to do a hot take, I don't think it's that crazy, Randy. So you boys go ahead and pick on me and pick on Allen, and we'll do a tag team ladder match.
Oh, well, I'm in there for that. Theo, what were your takes? Because like I said, I've listened to the Sonic Truth, but when he said this, he said he was fading the injury optimism. I'll just give you a sneak peek. I'm like, Allen, this man has missed, James Conner being this man, has missed 3.5 games on average over the course of his career. What's up with the injury optimism for James Conner, but not Breece Hall? Theo?
Well, I think that Allen's take could have been a little stronger if he used a different running back than James Conner. I think Allen's like our friend Dan Williamson is someone who fades injury optimism. Like once a guy gets hurt, he's automatically fading him. And I think that sort of pessimism can pay off for managers. I personally think Breece Hall is going to come back strong. Everything I'm reading and everything, it's like universally the Jets beat reporters are not necessarily like, hey, let's pump everybody up. Like they love negativity. And there's still the optimism with Hall. So I think if he would have used a different running back, Memphis, I think you would have liked this take a little bit more. But just I'll echo what Jerry said. I think that Connor is a massive volume bet. So like Connor, like for better or for worse, like Connor scores very well at a points per game clip, and he is the only show in town right now for Arizona. So the Allen is going to have a nice head start for the season. If they slow play Breece Hall, then you're already up big after 4 to 6 weeks. But you do make a great point that Connor himself is injury prone. So I'll defend Allen a little bit in a sense that he's fading Hall, he's fading Javonte Williams. You would have liked it better if he said a running back who hasn't been so hurt.
Well, and in fairness to Allen, you got to tell both sides. When I pressed him on this tweet on Twitter, because I didn't wait for the show to press this, by the way, he was like, it could have been Miles Sanders, it could have been Damian Pearson, and that's a different conversation. I'm like, but you can't fade injury optimism with a guy who's often injured himself. That was the part that because I was in that chat, by the way. That was, what was that, Wednesday, Thursday?
That was, I don't know, the days just blend together pod-wise.
It's another podcast for Theo, I understand. But I was listening to this, and I was like, James Conner. But like I said, in his defense, he did come back and said, because I think Miles Sanders could, but we're not a news show, but we might as well bring it up real quick here. Javonte Williams, it came out today that he's anticipating starting the season. And, it's great that people say things. I like the actions of the people. Because what are the actions? Has Denver signed anybody besides Samaje Perine to replace Melvin Gordon? No. Have the Jets brought in anybody to, they kept Zonovan Knight and they still have Michael Carter, who I like a little bit, but no. So the actions of the teams, and both these teams, I think if you ask Sean Payton or you ask Robert Saleh, they're going to be like, yeah, we're contending this year. And they've done nothing at the running back position. So I have a lot of optimism. Maybe and this is not normally my bag, maybe I'm too too optimistic on Breece Hall. I just thought it was fun. I thought it would be a good opportunity to take a tweet that I thought was a little bit out there and pick on Allen. Is that fair, guys?
Allen definitely has the mentality that he probably loves being on good people, bad tweets.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're not going to.
A lot of people can't handle it, Randy.
Trust me, the people who have blocked me over it will 100% agree with that. But so we're not going to give him the normal Dana White. We're going to give him like a nicer Dana White.
Federal prison. Federal fucking prison. If you're that fucking stupid.
See, I tried to fade it out before he said that. I wanted to put Allen in federal prison over that take because I just thought, man, James Conner injury optimism, get the hell out of here. All right, let's get into it. So tonight we're going to talk about 3 types of holds because we've sold some guys, we've bought some guys, and it all depends on your roster because one thing that drives me crazy, Theo mentioned on the press coverage podcast about looking for micro edges. It's great that a lot of other content creators do buy and sell shows. That's fantastic. But can we put like some qualifiers? Can we put some context around the buys and the sells? And now tonight, the holds that we're going to do. So we're going to do 3 groups of holds. The first hold is going to be a guy we're holding just because he's an absolute stud. No interest in moving him. Could someone come through with a Godfather offer and knock us off our feet? Maybe. But more often than not, just a guy you should be holding on to. The second guy is a guy that you should be holding on to because he's going to be worth a lot more. You're going to get a bigger ROI, return on investment on this player in season when we're actually scoring points. You're going to get a little bit less now, so why take less when you can wait a month and a half, and you can get more? And then the third guy is the guy that maybe, you could move, but the amount of points the amount of return that you're going to get for that player just is not worth moving him. It's like maybe it's a wide receiver. My guy's a wide receiver. Maybe you could get a second for him. Maybe you could get a third. But I think with my guy, and I can't wait to hear Theo and Jerry's, is that if we wait for that guy for just a little bit longer, let the season get going, you may A, decide that you want to keep him, or B, you could get a whole lot more. So we're gonna vary our holds. But Theo, you're the guest. By the way, Shout out to Theo. We're recording live on Sunday night. The U.S. men's national soccer team is playing. This is the first time that Theo has recorded a podcast, not only with Jerry, that bit's dead now. Hate to see that one go. And during the men's United States national team soccer. So if he like all of a sudden starts like fist pumping for Christian Pulisic, it is what it is. It's free included with the show. But Theo, give us that stud. Give us that absolute stud that you're not moving because you believe he's going to be worth more than you'll ever get in return.
And I'll also add, Memphis and Jerry, that the Dynasty WarZone gets a full game pause. There's no game in the background. It's DVR, it's paused. So right now it's basically just, it's nothing to me. I will say for my stud, it's kind of influenced slightly by your stud, not to give anything away, but it's Tyreek Hill. And last year he comes with his career high in terms of targets with 170. He has just an unbelievable season. He has 119 catches, but I was not going to sell him. And I think that there's some people wanted to sell high. Also, you get a lot of people who are age averse in Dynasty, and Tyreek Hill is getting a little bit older. This would have been a perfect cash out time. I was actually offered in one league, non-super flex. I was offered the 111 and a 2024 first. Usually for an older player, I would take that deal and run with it. But for Tyreek Hill, I think this could be a year where he could be the highest scoring non-quarterback in fantasy. It's an odd situation because he does have another elite pass catcher next to him in Jalen Waddle. However, I think it's just, you just ride it out at this point with Tyreek Hill. Unless you're in a rebuild, then he's the kind of guy, even if I was, a middling team, if I thought that I had a realistic 2-year window to win a dynasty championship, I would try to hold Tyreek, because I think there's few players like him. And we also have to look at the fact that he had only 7 touchdown catches last year. This guy's been a touchdown machine. There's a chance that the touchdowns could just go nuts this year. So it's rare, but he's an older player who I'm just not looking to move unless I just get an overwhelming Godfather type offer.
Well, I'll do you one better, because last week he was my buy. Not only am I holding Tyreek Hill, I'm buying Tyreek Hill. I honestly think Tyreek Hill may be the funnest wide receiver of this generation to watch, and that's no shade for me. And I'm not a Detroit, Lions fan like Jerry, but I think he may be my favorite wide receiver to watch since Calvin Johnson. Just a combination of speed and how he gets up to speed, but he's so quick. Because there's a lot of fast guys and there's a lot of shifty guys, but he just has that rare playmaking ability. So much fun. Throws up the deuces. Jerry, what are your thoughts on Tyreek Hill as a hold? And then who is your hold?
Easy. I mean, that's easy. And I could easily see you taking those 2 first for sure. But if you're going to win and you get to rub it in your friend's face, by all means, Tyreek Hill is exactly the type of guy that's going to do that. I went with a younger guy though, but he's getting a little bit of hate. The NFL draft did not do him any favors. Is DK Metcalf. So last year, 1,000-ish yards. Year before that, a little bit under. Still had the touchdowns. Didn't really have them with Geno. Here's the thing. He hasn't missed a game in the last 2 years. And the best ability is availability. He is going into his age 26 season. So you're looking at pretty easily, 4 years probably before you start to see sort of that talent regression commonly that we see in wide receivers. If I can have stability like that, and I've got a guy who's had 1,300 yard seasons, and I've got a guy who's had multiple double-digit touchdown seasons, JSN showing up there is not ideal, but that's baked into his price right now. I understand that people sort of wanted to bail because it was unsexy, because JSN is the guy, right? There's not a person that endured 2023's rookie hype that they didn't get extremely excited about JSN. And seeing him go there sort of hurt JSN. It sort of hurt DK Metcalf. But if there was ever going to be a time to acquire DK Metcalf, now's the time. And I will take a young, extremely talented wide receiver who has regressed trade value-wise every single time. And so and if I already have him, let me ride that boy out. Because what am I going to profit if I sell him right now? I don't think you are. If this was 2 years ago when he was, Dynasty wide receiver 2, sure. But we have long passed that. I mean, he's probably, I don't know exactly where he's at ADP wise, probably 10, 12 wide receivers. And people like Garrett Wilson have certainly jumped him. He's an easy hold for me. And I will take it, and I will just have that stability sitting there, and I will love every freaking second of it.
Theo, what are your thoughts on DK? Now, I know the Podfather, because I listened to the Sonic Truth. I know he still believes in DK Metcalf. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. For me, I think Jerry's probably spot on that he's a hold. There's some like all over the place takes today. I heard Evan Silva saying that he's got wide receiver 1 overall potential this year. And then you hear the argument to sell him.
That's pretty spicy.
It's very spicy. Silva had some spicy takes. He was on Alexander Madison as like a guy. He had Alexander Madison very, very high too. That's another conversation. But for me, DK had 140 targets last year. And then, like you said, he had the 12 touchdowns the previous year. And then I believe Jerry 2 years ago, he had 10 touchdowns. So you have the two double-digit touchdown seasons and then the massive target year. I don't know. For me, he's 26, so that's still kind of in his favor. But we haven't seen that like massive peak season from him. So I don't know. JSN does scare me a little bit because if he starts going down to like the 125 target type player that we've seen in years past, then it's a little harder for him to beat things. But like you said, he's a very proven commodity, and in most situations, he's the kind of guy that you want to keep on your fantasy team. But I do think that there's a chance that a year from now, JSN leaps him in dynasty value, and I think that's always a scary thing when you have a player that talented.
Would you say he's not already there? I mean, I think they're probably pretty close too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the eye of the beholder thing. Like you said, DK is a fringe wide receiver 1 in most dynasty startups, and I would say that JSN's right about there, right on the fringe.
There, yeah.
I think it all depends on your team build. I think if people are kind of going for it a little more, then DK makes more sense. If people are more long-term focused or productive struggle, it's JSN. But you kind of sold me. I think he's a hold. I'm shocked that you were not giving a Ken Walker take right out the bat. But I think it's a fine argument, and DK is obviously a proven player.
Well, like I said in the chat, Kenneth Walker was actually my backup choice in case somebody else decided to take DK Metcalf. So,
well, let me, because Theo mentioned the targets. If I told you that DK Metcalf had more targets than Devonta Smith last year, you'd be like, what? What? Wait, what? Yeah, but that's true. 141. But here's the thing. What if you took 25 from DK? It's fine. It's a target and a half a game. I don't care. He's the kind of guy right now that even though Player Profiler, because it's a sharp site, they have DK as the wide receiver 9 in a startup. There are people who don't. And you could literally go out and get him as your wide receiver 2 in a 1 QB league. And when you have DK Metcalf, who has weak winning upside every single time he steps on the field, you buy that, man. But, the guy that I want to talk about, I traded him to Theo last year in a very important league to me. And when I think about that, as I say this guy's name,
emotional damage.
I traded Theo Justin Herbert in the league. Now, don't get me wrong. I got a good haul. I got Trevor Lawrence. I got Miles Sanders chasing a championship and then a pick. I think it was a non-contender second. But
did you get it? Was that a Derek Carr involved in that trade?
Oh,
too?
you know what? It was
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, Miles Sanders, and a second for Herbert and maybe like another pick.
Yeah.
But the point of it is I wished I hadn't have done that deal as good as that deal was for me. I mean, sometimes you have to get outside the fishbowl that was the most recent season. Because if you do that, and Justin Herbert finished as the QB 11 last year, averaging 16.5 fantasy points a game, it's almost like we forget to go back and look at the fact that he was the QB 2 his second year in the league. And then he was like the QB 8 his rookie year, but he only played 15 games. And in his rookie year and in his sophomore year, he averaged 22 fantasy points a game using PPR, basic quarterback scoring. You're not gonna get better than that. And he plays every game. He missed 2 games as a rookie because we hadn't stabbed Tyrod Taylor with a needle yet. But once we did, he never looked back. Crack ribs, fine. Never looked back. and now he's had an offensive coordinator change. I think it's going to be for the better. You're getting Kellen Moore. Whether you love or don't love, like me, Quentin Johnston, that is more help. You've got Austin Eckler in the backfield. Hopefully, Keenan and Mike Williams can stay healthy, because I think that was part of the offense that was hurt. It wasn't so much Keenan. It was the ability to stretch the field in Mike Williams. So I love Justin Herbert. I think he is a guy that I should have never moved, even though I got my man, also with beautiful hair, Mr. Trevor Lawrence. But Theo, obviously you were willing to pay a good price to me to get him. What are your thoughts on Herbs?
I'm totally with you. Like, Herbert is an absolute stud. And I think if we want to look at redraft, last year in redraft, he was the QB2 this time of the year. So like, that obviously didn't work out for people. And I think that kind of left a little bit of bad taste in people's mouths. And it's corrected this year. He's going about where he should in terms of redraft. But in terms of Dynasty, he's a set it and forget it stud for years to come. And even if you don't like the Quentin Johnston pick, you have to like the fact that the Chargers made that pick, and they're trying to add weapons for him. They see the two aging wide receivers, and they're going to get Herbert what he needs to thrive. And I love the Kellen Moore addition. I think Kellen Moore will be better when he's outside of like the Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, umbrella, where he can get out there and kind of earn himself a head coaching job. Because I think this is the chance for Kellen Moore to go have this offense go nuclear, push the pace, and score a lot of points this year. I think Herbert's almost a buy right now in Dynasty, because he's just such a talented player. And I think people are just a little bit chilled out on him. He's almost like people are like, yeah, he's great, but it's not like the enthusiasm you see this offseason that you even see for guys like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. I think that there's a lot more enthusiasm for like that unknown, third year rise than a guy like Herbert who's shown it on the field.
Dynasty players love sizzle. They don't love steak, Theo. That's why,
right,
man.
That's right.
Jerry, what are your thoughts on Herbs? Because I'm looking at the pass attempts per game. Dallas and the Chargers over the last 3 years have been, within an attempt per game of each other. I think the big thing last year was the absence of the wide receivers at times. I mean, nothing against Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton and Gerald Everett. I see it in the chat right here from Alan. Alan's not Seslowski, but Alan Davis, talking about Gerald Everett, and he had to step up. When they have this, this offense fully functioning and everybody on the field, I think you're going to see real fireworks, and I think it will be much more efficient with Kellen Moore this year. So I don't think the volume goes up, but I think the efficiency has the potential to go way up. Jerry, you were saying about Herbs?
What does this man got to do? He's been in the league for 3 years. Average it out. You're looking at like 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, like 11 picks. In your first 3 years, consistently, and I have that going forward. Yes, I think I'm with Theo when he said he's a borderline buy. The problem is, and sort of like with DK Metcalf, the people that have him, they love him. So it's sort of hard to acquire in that case, and sort of the same thing with Justin Herbert. Because like if I have Justin Herbert, he's there. He's chilling. We're having a good time, and I'm riding that man into the sunset. We ride at dawn. So I love Herbert. And if anyone doesn't love him and they have him, oh, you can bet your sweet ass I am going to come calling.
Well, I'm going to try to pick myself up and put myself back together while we take just a quick time out to hear one last pause to hear about something near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is the world famous, in quotations, draft kit. Let's hear from our man, the Podfather, and we'll be right back.
Hey, it's the Podfather of great news. The 2023 draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated areas, and that one dynamic for each team that you need to know when making decisions on draft day. And we added a bunch of features. I mean, individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, also brand new this year, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league, do's, don'ts, tips, and what the more innovative fantasy commissioners are doing this year. That's presented by Trophy Smack. The whole package is presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the FFPC, Ray Garvin, Derek Brown, the best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.
Yeah, I love that line. No, it's not the cheapest, but as I've always quoted my man Jerry Jones as saying, cheap things aren't nice and nice things aren't cheap. That's just life. And by the way, I'm getting the messages, guys. I understand. You want to see the Podfather on this show. It's gonna happen. You guys know I'm a baseball dad. I travel around with my kid. That ends in July. That's this month. So we're a couple of weeks away. I'm gonna book the Podfather in August to come on the Dynasty WarZone, because what I don't want to do is tell you guys, hey, the Podfather's coming on the WarZone, and then be like, oh shit, we're playing in a championship game. I won't actually be there. So we'll book it. We'll get it right. We're glad to have Theo tonight. But Jerry, I want to go to you. I want to know the man that you're holding right now, because you know you're going to get more for him in season when we actually do that thing called scoring fantasy points.
I went with a weird one. I wanted to sort of think on the edge as best I could. Someone that is being cast off but has a real opportunity to bounce back. And Matthew Stafford just kept popping into my head. He's still going to have Cooper Kupp. Cam Akers is going to be a little bit better, hopefully. And Stafford, this is what Stafford has done throughout his time playing in the NFL. He always sets the world on fire, and everybody falls in love with him, and then he poops his pants the next season. He has done it every single time. Go ahead. As a Detroit Lions fan, any Detroit Lions fan will tell you that when we went to the playoffs, the very next year, as soon as everyone started drinking the Kool-Aid again, 4-12. It is just what has happened. It's like, you know, he got the new setting. He got to live in California. He did not have to go to a place where it was so cold that it hurt to breathe when he stepped outside. He was rejuvenated. It was wonderful. He won the Super Bowl, went absolutely bananas, just like his Kelvin Johnson season in 2011, where he threw 40 touchdowns, and then last year was just bad. The wheels fell off on the Rams. It was a horrible situation. Listen, they had the victory cigar. They enjoyed it. He's worth nothing essentially right now. He's being cast off, but if you have him, I'm not trying to get rid of him, because if he plays to 75% of what he can do, he's a championship winning caliber QB2. And if you already have that situation, I'm going to take it because he's stable. What is the problem with Matthew Stafford is he gets hurt. That's he had, the first couple of years he was in the league, separated his collarbone, one of the greatest mic'd up instances ever against the Browns. And then he was just Iron Man for like 6 years. And then the last 4 or 5 years banged up, except for the Super Bowl winning season. But when he plays, you play Matthew Stafford. He's got Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp can make unbelievable things. Tyler Higbee, another extremely underrated, great cheap buy. I'm going to take Stafford. And I wanted to go with a quarterback because we tend to base most of our podcasts on Superflex because it is the premier, way to play this game. And it's just such a paramount of a position. So Stafford, cheap, easy to acquire. And if you have him, don't you dare get rid of that boy.
Now, I saw Theo make the same face that I made when Jerry said Matthew Stafford. Theo, what were your thoughts? And then I'll share mine.
I just think it's an interesting choice. And I like how Jerry thought outside the box for this answer. He's certainly not a sell because you'd be selling at the low. He was so bad last year and so good the previous season. He's very much like if you're in a championship window in Superflex and you see that Matt Stafford's back to returning high-end QB2 numbers, which you'll know pretty quickly, Jerry. I think you'll know in that first month if
100%.
the Rams are back. Stafford could be a guy that you say, hey, you know what? Stafford gives me like an arbitrage Kirk Cousins type play this year. Like a guy with no rushing upside, but he can throw some touchdowns. He can give me a high-end QB2 numbers, and let me offer this guy a couple of picks to just make my run. I think that there's obvious downside, but again, if you've held him this long, the time to sell him would have been after the Super Bowl.
100%.
And if you stuck with him, then he's certainly to hold. He's absolutely a hold. Memphis, where are you at on this?
What's changed between the team that he's on now, from an offensive skill position standpoint, and the team that he's on from two years ago? Because 2 years ago that he had almost 4,900 yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. He had 103 QB rating. If he gets off to anywhere near that, and the defense is going to be bad, he may even have to throw more. And if he can stay healthy, which is a big if, he's 36-ish years old.
Yep.
That's okay. If you can get one good year out of him, and God forbid, I don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen. Someone's going to lose a stud. Some stud is going to get off to a slow start, or someone's going to get hurt in camp, and we have more quarterbacks of a high level running more than ever. Whether it's Jalen Hurts, even Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert run a little bit. Joe Burrow last year, I was looking at Joe Burrow's stats when I was doing my Justin Herbert research. I was like, how the hell did Joe Burrow get so high in the QB rankings? Because his numbers from a passing standpoint weren't that great. Joe Burrow rushed for 250 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. It's going to happen. The QB position is so much more mobile unless you're Matt Stafford. And you may be in the first week of October and have an absolute fantastic sell window that will get you way more than you'll get now, because necessity could drive that price up. I got to give you credit, Jerry. Sometimes you zig where I think you zag, and that was a good one. But Theo, what's your guy that you're holding because you think you're going to get more in a bit?
I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to give you 2. I think that right now that there is a window for J.K. Dobbins, and he would be a guy that I absolutely would not sell, because I think that this Todd Monken offense is real. I think that they're going to score a ton of points. Dobbins is 24 years old. He's obviously missed a lot of time in his career. You saw last year in the playoffs, he gave you that really nice playoff game against Cincinnati, and I think that that's kind of like a harbinger of things to come. I think that based on, you talked about this, Memphis, with some of these other backfields. What did Baltimore add in the backfield? Nothing. They are confident in Dobbins. And I've heard you on the WarZone, Memphis, talk about Dobbins, and he's the kind of guy that you like. But I think that there's an easy out where saying, hey, I'm going to sell the guy before he gets hurt again, or based on just the hype behind the offense. But I think this is a guy who could have double-digit touchdowns this year. I think he's going to have his career season, and he would be a guy that I would hate to get rid of now in the summer. I think if you want to sell him, you're going to have multiple opportunities during the year. And then my other one is Treylon Burks. I think Treylon Burks, right now, it's sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card for dynasty managers. You had it all offseason. I saw a couple people selling Burks for a late first in non-superflex, and I kind of understand it. A chance to pivot off of an absolutely terrible offense. But Burks had 18 points, 17 points, then catches a touchdown and gets hurt. They have 45% of the targets are vacated in Tennessee, 40% of the air yards. There is no target competition for Treylon Burks. And I think right now there's this perception that Tennessee's offense is just going to be abysmal. If they beat that even slightly, they could be the 10th worst offense in the league. And Treylon Burks could end up getting himself a 25% plus target share. He's going to be worth more during the season as well. So I cheated a little bit, Memphis. Gave you 2. Sorry about that one.
No, I want to focus on J.K. Dobbins because my love or lack thereof on Treylon Burks is neither here nor there, but I'm very practical in my thought on him. If he avoids DeAndre Hopkins, it's wheels up, all systems go on Treylon Burks. If they get DeAndre Hopkins, you got headaches. But I want to talk about J.K. Dobbins. I think that's an absolute just stroke of genius, Theo, and I'll tell you why. What is the forget the offensive coordinator. What's the offensive line built to do in Baltimore? It's built to run block. But who do you want to run less? Lamar Jackson. Why? Because you just gave him $250 million. You need him to pass the ball more. Now, will Lamar run? Of course he will. Will he have more designed runs? Probably not. So who's in the last year of his deal? J.K. Dobbins. Who's got something to prove? Because I love guys. That's why I went and got Miles Sanders last year. I love guys, especially running backs in contract years. I think based on what the offense is going to want to do, which is pass more, but what are they built to do? They're built to run. They added Ben Cleveland, the offensive guard, and I think hopefully Ronnie Stanley can stay healthy, but this offensive line's a run-blocking offensive line, and the biggest beneficiary from that is J.K. Dobbins. I think J.K. Dobbins was a master stroke call. Jerry, what's yours?
He was my backup in case I had to go last and someone else picked, Stafford or something. I actually had a couple for this category, but I'm with Theo. I really think J.K. Dobbins is going to explode. And I don't want to buy too much of the late season hype that we had sort of at the end of last year where we finally got to see him. My only worry about J.K. Dobbins is that the person that has him is going to hold him like they love him. Because they're probably the person that drafted him, and they've just been holding through the injuries. And then finally we got down the stretch last year, and he absolutely, he had 100-yard game, 100-yard game, 100% a hold. I'm not selling him. This is sort of the young running back thing, Javonte Williams, I'm holding. Breece Hall, I'm holding. J.K. Dobbins, I'm holding. I want to see what these guys can do. They've all shown flashes. I just need you guys to stay healthy. I know that's easier said than done at that position in the NFL in today's age. But Theo, since I also had that idea, I also think it's genius, friend.
There you go.
Look at that. Look at that. Well, I kind of feel boring because mine is a little bit boring, but I think this is going to be your last shot. I think this is his age 29, 30 season, and that's Stefon Diggs. But guys, what do we have against a guy who's put up, and this is his 3 years in Buffalo, 328, 316, 285 fantasy points. He averages just a shade over 310 fantasy points a season. A game would be something else. But just an absolute stud. And he did the boo-boo face. He did a little pouting. He did a little sad face. I would like to have the ball come to me a little bit more. I'm like, Jesus, man, you had 154, 165, and 166 targets. We're talking about a guy who gets almost 10 targets a game. And again, right now, this is the old guys suck season. We like rookies. We like young, scintillating upside guys. I'm telling you, when Stefon Diggs is going absolutely crazy and it's September and it's October and the weather's nice in Buffalo and he has to score to keep up with the Dolphins because the Dolphins offense is good and the Jets are improved and they're playing a first place schedule and they're playing Kansas City and they're playing Jacksonville, they're going to pass maybe more than ever. And Stefon Diggs is still the guy. I know Theo loves Dalton Kincaid. Maybe Theo will mix in some Dalton Kincaid. I know Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakur, maybe James Cook's more involved in the passing game. I don't know. I know that if you like 10 targets a game, you should like Stefon Diggs. And I think your big cash out's going to come here in about a month and a half. So that's my guy. Theo, you've been very pro Buffalo. Your friends, is it Mike Shope? Am I saying that right?
Mike Shope, just a tremendous show, The Deep End. You can catch him on Tuesday nights right here on Player Profiler YouTube. Mike Shope's on Damian Harris. Just as a little bit of nugget from Mike. Mike and I bump heads.
Let that be true. Let Mike nail that one, and I'll send him a nice edible arrangement if Damian Harris comes in this year.
There you go. But yeah, he's back on Diggs as well. I think that it's funny you bring up Diggs and I bring up Hill, and then you brought up Hill last week. I honestly don't think people know how to handle this group of older wide receivers in Dynasty right now. These guys are scoring so well, but it does give people pause because, you hear words like AJ Pex, and a lot of times that's been the thing to do where you pivot off of an older guy, and it's been the move in Dynasty. But I don't know if this is the case with this group of the big four. I think Devontae Adams played so well last year. And despite the quarterback issues, I think people don't know what to do with him in Dynasty, but Memphis, you bring up Diggs. It's a great one. Diggs is just automatic fantasy points. He's been fantastic. And Dalton Kincaid is more of a threat to the auxiliary wide receivers than he is to Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs is just automatic points in fantasy. He's such a value, and there's nothing more to say. The guy's going to continue to score as long as he's attached to that offense with Josh Allen. He's aging gracefully, and he wins in a number of ways.
Well, and
I just want you to say that sort of thing about me. Just aging gracefully and wins in multiple ways.
You're aging gracefully.
Jerry, you look great. So I look at last year, and I'm looking at the top 4 receivers in PPR points. And you had Justin Jefferson, just a total freak show, quarterback, dome, he's got everything you'd want. The next guy, Tyreek Hill, we already talked about him, 20 points a game. He's like 29, 30 years old. Oh, Devontae Adams, also 29, 30 years old. Stefon Diggs was number 4, 29, 30 years old. Oh, the guy who got hurt and missed the back part of the season, Cooper Kupp, also 29. You're starting to see a pattern. We get in this bad habit in Dynasty of ignoring the old guys in the offseason just because they don't look sexy on your roster. You know what looks sexy? That Cash App or league safe payout that you get from your commissioner because you won the money. You open up that box from our friends at Trophy Smack, you open up a big old trophy with your name on there. That feels really good. It doesn't feel good in the summer when your roster's not super sexy, but I like money and I like winning championships. So we got one more hold to go. Now I'll go first. This way I can just get it out of the way, because I got to tell you about a guy that I'm holding because I don't know what his total outlook. I mentioned on the Dynasty WarZone pod that I did by myself. It's not on the Player Profiler feed. It's on the Dynasty WarZone feed. You can find it in audio and on YouTube. And I wanted to go Sky Moore, but you can't do all Chiefs. That just feels like a cheat code. You just, you could always go to like a Chief for upside. I'm going Elijah Moore. Here's a guy that as a rookie with the New York Jets and the quarterback situation was a shit show. Whether it was, Mike White, whether it was Zach Wilson, it was just rough. It was rough out there in those streets for a young guy. They change some things around. They bring in a new head coach, and it goes sideways very quickly for Elijah Moore. He wants to get a trade. He's not active on it's weird. And now he's in a spot that it feels like they want him. And I think that because of the offense that Cleveland is building, because you got Joe Burrow in your division, you got Lamar Jackson in your division. Oh, by the way, I heard this on a podcast today. This blew my mind. The Steelers over their last 9 games were 7-2, and they only had 5 turnovers. That's an offense on the come. That's a podcast for a different day. But I love Elijah Moore. I mentioned last week I was buying, I think it was actually Dan who was buying Amari Cooper because I bought him in a trade. But this is a buy on offense. I think I'm fading Nick Chubb unless I'm like all in win now, which that was a guy I mentioned last week as well. But I love Elijah Moore. And Theo, you're right there in the Long Island area. You are a New Yorker. What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore? I mean, he's no longer in your city, but what do you think about him for Dynasty and going forward?
I love Elijah Moore. I haven't sold any of my life. I'll take it back. I sold one Elijah Moore share this offseason. I pivoted for like a Marvin Mims share. So that was like a pivot. But I had so much Elijah Moore that it was more like a just a little slight pivot more than a get out of Elijah Moore. It's a great landing spot. Cleveland, everything that Cleveland's doing is making you think they're trying to put Deshaun Watson in a position to succeed. There's no more Kareem Hunt. There's not going to be this, two-headed monster at running back. There's going to be wide receivers getting targeted. They draft Tillman. They trade for Moore. I remember on the Dynasty WarZone podcast last summer how much you guys loved Garrett Wilson, but you couldn't figure out whether it was going to be Wilson or Moore. And Moore, that got a lot of us last summer on that, where Wilson and Moore were looked at as these like equals. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's done a lot to pass him by in Dynasty, but this could be a great bounce back opportunity. And I think Memphis, I'll take it a step further. I think that there's a percentage chance that he leads all Cleveland wide receivers in fantasy points this year. If it works out, it could really, really work out in Cleveland. All the beat writers say that he's tearing it up. And, we do see Amari Cooper with like the weird splits, like home and away splits. And we don't have a whole lot of sample size with Deshaun Watson playing with Amari Cooper. A lot of the Amari Cooper scoring last year came with Brissett. It's more likely not going to be Cooper, but I think if Moore hits and he gets back to what he showed us as a rookie in New York, then this could be like an ultimate bounce back, an ultimate revenge for all the dynasty managers who were so hurt last year with their Elijah Moore share. So I love that you're on Elijah Moore, and Sigmund Bloom was big time on Elijah Moore this year. Loves him this year.
Well, you could never go wrong being on the same side of a player as Sigmund Bloom. But Jerry, who is your guy? And please feel free to add anything on Elijah Moore that you may have.
Well, Theo pissed me off a little bit because I've been leading the parade on Amari Cooper and his easy acquisition.
You're probably right, Jerry. Like I'll say, like Amari Cooper, right? Like scored like he was a wide receiver 1 last year, and people are not treating him like that. So
no, they hate him.
Yeah, they hate him still. So
no, but as far as a hold for Elijah Moore, like you're not even when he was a rookie, like he wasn't very expensive. I mean, maybe he was 110, 111. More than likely, he was an early second round pick. And no, I am totally cool holding because like what Theo said, and I don't hate you for this one. If he does hit, monster, right? Because he's going to be like 24 and you're going to have seen him surpass Amari Cooper in that offense tied to Deshaun Watson, who has shown what he can do. Yes. To the moon. My guy, we talked about Damian Harris a little bit. We talked about how we're going to talk about some young guys. Mine's James Cook. Here's the thing. We go ahead. Let's talk about Damian Harris. What the hell has that guy really done? I've seen 1050. Like that. He misses a ton of games. His ceiling is at this point less than 1,100 yards. He had a 15 touchdown season. That's the outlier. You see in 2020, he had 2 touchdowns. You see last year, he had 3 touchdowns. And then there's the 15 sitting in there. What is more likely to happen? He got signed for 1 year, $1.7 million, which in NFL money is circus peanuts. And if anyone's ever had circus peanuts, they're absolutely some of the most atrocious candy that the world has ever bestowed upon us. And then you have James Cook, right? In his rookie season, right? Not even great. He went much earlier, which has been a disappointment to me mostly, which is all I care about because I'm selfish. But he has better yards per attempt as a running back than Damian Harris has ever had by an entire yard, 5.7 yards to 4.7 yards. He had more receptions, more receiving touchdowns, more receiving yardage than Damian Harris has had in any season of his career. He's 26 years old. James Cook going to be 24. He was drafted in the second round to that offense. Listen, you're always going to have to compete with Stefon Diggs. And Josh Allen is always going to be in the way of some of your touchdowns. But if James Cook hits, you are benefiting from it. He is going to be an easy sell because he'll be a young running back on a rookie contract on a great offense. If it's a hit, it's a big hit. So I'm holding on him. I'm not bailing on it. Listen, getting 89 touches rushing on a season, right? Like it's horrible and it sucks. And if you took him at 107, like I did because I'm a bit of a bozo, listen, we're probably not going to recoup that. But if he can hit 1,100 yards, sorry, Damian Harris is going to get hurt. I am a history man. I got the diploma on my wall that says I love that kind of stuff. History suggests Damian Harrison is playing 9 games.
Well, I love Damian Harris, but I am going to make you go watch it. Go find my 3 off-season buys because I actually had James Cook as a buy. Love Damian Harris. I am absolutely saturated to the gills with Damian Harris, but the guy misses. I'll leave you this nugget. You have to go find the rest. He misses 40% of his games. Gang, you can't miss 40% of work anywhere but the NFL because you're talented and keep your job. You miss 40% of your work, you're going to get fired tomorrow. So you better show your ass up. But Damian Harris gets away with it. I think James Cook.
But if you don't, if you could let me know where that job is because I only want to show up for 60% of my work.
Yeah, well, don't underestimate the power of being reliable and showing up. So I was listening to Mike and the Podfather the other day, and Mike is super patched in. He does a local radio show there in Buffalo on talking about James Cook and Damian Harris. Where are you at with James Cook, Theo?
I love James Cook. James Cook was one of
Good.
my
Thank
guys.
God.
Attaboy.
And
Breaks
James
my
Cook
tie.
also, like Devin Singletary, had 3 straight seasons with 50 targets. So if James Cook just needs to absorb that and also absorb some of the carries, and with his big playability in that offense, I mean, James Cook is a no-brainer right now. I had him as one of the 2 for this answer. I love James Cook. I had him also as a running back I'm really trying to draft a lot in redraft. Memphis and I have been putting together some of these videos for our YouTube site, and I had him on there. I had him right on there. So I love it.
Well, who do you love that you're going to hold? Who's your last hold that you're just holding on to because you think that what you get out of it is not worth making that move today?
So I'm going to take a higher name here, like a guy who's a big scorer last year, and it's Rhamondre Stephenson. And Rhamondre Stephenson had this career year, and he did it in his second year. He was the only first or second year player to finish as an RB1 last year, but you didn't see the dynasty value for him go as sky high as you would have thought. I think there's always the mentality in a lot of fantasy managers' minds that he's a Bill Belichick running back, so there's no safety there. I think also people look at him as kind of a little bit of a compiler who was in a perfect storm offense-wise, where those targets were out of necessity. And also there's some draft capital snobs because he was a day 3 guy and not a day 1 or day 2 guy. But I think this is a player that is going to be top 5 in running back targets again. And I think there's an opportunity for him to be a double-digit touchdown scorer. I think that Bill O'Brien is going to have a huge impact on that offense. And I think that Rhamondre Stephenson is here to stay. Memphis, you talk about what people did in terms of what they added in terms of competition. Damian Harris is gone. And I like Pierre Strong, but thinking that Pierre Strong is going to take this big leap forward, or Kevin Harris, that's a leap of faith. And that's more of a guess, an educated guess, than what is actually going to happen. I think Rhamondre Stephenson is the focal point of this offense. I think that they are going to utilize him as much as they can. He's going to have a second straight year of RB1 production. And I think right now you're not getting that sort of return on value from dynasty managers. And I think that he's the kind of guy that during the season is going to be worth a lot more than he is right now to you in July.
Well, as much as I am not a huge Rhamondre guy, I will say this: just follow the targets. If you're going to chase anything, that's why I did that separate podcast the other day just about targets. You know, there's some target data out there on guys like Cade Otton and Chris Godwin and just a lot of guys that you wouldn't think of. Joe Mixon had 75 targets last year in 14 games. Holy cow. Joe Mixon could be, join that elusive 100 target club, but chase targets, guys. If you're going to chase in dynasty fantasy football, err on the side of targets because they're worth 2.8 the amount of a rushing attempt. So I think that's a very well said. Again, I'm not the hugest Rhamondre guy. I don't love him as an athlete. I think he more so than anybody, because there's supposedly this two-way battle in the AFC East where New England and Miami are both interested in Dalvin Cook. And if he were to land in New England, that just absolutely just blows up the spot for Rhamondre. So there's a bunch of guys, and unfortunately, it sucks to be doing Dynasty podcasts. Wait a minute, let me rephrase that. It never sucks to be doing Dynasty podcasts because we love this shit. But it sucks to be doing Dynasty content right now, not knowing where Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins, even to a degree, Fat Lenny and Kareem Hunt, even Zeke Elliott, they're going to ruin someone's, August. And there's not really a lot we can do about it. But that's my take on Rhamondre. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
The Rhamondre may be the one player that made me look the absolute stupidest last year. So I have to just withdraw my opinion on him, because if I double down, I am going to just absolutely eat crow. But then if I pivot and then he disappoints me like I thought he was going to do last year, then I'm just going to hate myself. So I am more apt. If I have Rhamondre, I'm definitely holding him. I'm not, because the receptions last year were silly. There is simply no way to just quantify how overlooked he was with that sort of production rate from receptions. It's unbelievable. And I didn't even realize it because I didn't have tons of shares of Rhamondre, because I was such a, like Theo said, like a draft capital, snob. So I cannot have Rhamondre Stephenson on my Dynasty rosters. My God, why would such a peasant quality? No, and
you do that too well.
I'm a medieval English historian. Of course, I do that well. I have brandy somewhere in here. I got some cigars in here. But yeah, so by the time I realized what he was doing, I was like, "Holy shit, Jerry, you bozo!" So I'm with you. I'm absolutely not selling on that, because he did it as a young guy. And if you can instill confidence in Bill Belichick, he is going to continue to do that. So I'm with you. I like that call.
Well,
he compared him to like Lawrence Taylor in terms of his development in year 2. It was wild, some of the quotes. Belichick rarely heaps praise on guys like he did Rhamondre Stevenson.
Yeah, the only other guy that he's praised like that, he never did that for Tom Brady. See what happened there. But Theo, my man, so good to have you on. So good to have you and Jerry on the same show. Now, again, I tease Theo. Like, he may have started a 5th podcast in the time that we've done this podcast. But that's what I love about this guy. Surround yourself in life. This is not just a Dynasty take. This is a life take. Surround yourself with hardworking people on a similar trajectory, on the same path as you. I'm not even going to try to say that word, because that's Theo. Theo grinds. He's an awesome dad. Every time I talk to Theo, like we're texting or talking, hey, I'm taking my kid, I'm picking my kid. He's doing podcasts. He's doing guest spots. He's doing so much, and he does it at the benefit of us, the fantasy consumer, because I listen to Theo's shows. Theo puts out good stuff. Theo, I know you could go through them all, but whichever one you're a podcaster, take your time. Talk about all the podcasts you got going on, and what can we look forward to from Mr. Theo?
Yeah, so definitely check out press coverage tomorrow. I have Josh Larkey on. There is no Sonic Truth this week, Memphis, but you can check out Matt Kelly coming on the GOAT District Wednesday night. And we need to get him scheduled for Dynasty WarZone. I agree. That'll be an awesome one.
I don't want to, first of all, you don't book the Fantasy Colossus and then say, hey, by the way, it's you and Jerry. Nothing against Jerry, but it's like,
no, you don't do that.
You need a full house WarZone.
You roll out the red carpet for the Fantasy Colossus. You roll out the red carpet for Matt. And it's weird because as like a dad,
I'm like the circus peanuts of this show. Let's be honest.
You're the peeps.
You're for the elephant.
You're more the peeps. You're more the peeps of the show. But I don't want to like be DMing with the Colossus and being like, hey, look, man, we're in the championship game. It's going to be you and Jerry. But Theo, I love what you got going on. You are a large part of why Jerry and I brought the Dynasty WarZone to simulcast on Player Profiler, because we believe in you. We believe in the vision of this company. We love what Matt and Billy and everybody here is doing. But what we're going to do is we're going to get out of here. But I want to remind you, you need to respond. You need to reply. And I'm asking. I'm not reminding. I'm asking. I'm asking you to go subscribe to 2 YouTube channels, Player Profiler and Dynasty WarZone. And then 2 audio channels, Dynasty WarZone and Player Profiler. Why? Because there's bonus shows. There's so much content. And just like if you went to a Brazilian steakhouse, Theo, you like a good Brazilian steakhouse?
I'm neutral. It's a hold for me. What
about you, Jerry?
I like them.
I love it because I'm a meat eater. But you know what? Pretend you're at a Brazilian steakhouse. I don't play best ball. Then don't listen to those podcasts. Just wait for the Dynasty stuff. Wait for the undrafted. Wait for the Sonic Truth. Wait for the Dynasty WarZone and the GOAT District. You'll get a ton of Dynasty. And just like when the guy brings the chicken to my table at the Brazilian steakhouse, beat it. Beat it and come back with that filet. So you may not like everything that comes through your airwaves, but you're going to love something. So please subscribe everywhere. I'm going to get these guys out of here. I'm going to jump on a separate feed. This is why you subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel, because later in the week, you'll catch me and Theo talking about the rookies that we think you need to hold on to as we enter Dynasty season, guys. We're a couple of weeks away from camp, 3 weeks away from the Hall of Fame game. Theo, man, thanks again for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So
Anytime,
listen,
Memphis.
Jerry, anything from you? By the way, if you made it to the end of the podcast, tonight was the Major League Baseball draft. There was a young man, he played high school baseball about an hour and 15 minutes away from where I live. His name is Max Clark. He got drafted 3rd overall to the Detroit Tigers. I may have to go out and buy a Detroit Tigers hat. If you don't know the name Max Clark, Google him. He's an amazing kid. I just wanted to throw that out there because you know what? It's my show and we're wrapping it up. So, but anyway, on behalf of that man, his name is Jerry Sinclair. You know him better as the man of the hour and the man with the power, our director of content, and more importantly, good friend Theo. Remember, here at the Dynasty WarZone, we're just trying to make the world a better place for fantasy football. We'll see you back here next week with more Dynasty action. See you guys. Have a great week.